Well, and you're talking about traveling, right? Well, your traveling is either going to, depending on your mode of transportation, but likely going to need fuel, some sort of fuel.
Yeah, where are you going to get fuel?
Is the grid down? Is somebody filling the tanks at the gas station? How long does that last? What is up, everybody? Jim to my right, Mr. Ryan Muckenhirn across from me. Guys, I was down at Vortex Edge the other day, Jim, and you guys seem pretty prepared down there. I was talking with Brennan, and he had a plate carrier, and it was all kitted out with some necessities, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I need one of those things. And you take into consideration, like, current events and levels of uncertainty, and people are like, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're canceled, you're wearing a tinfoil hat, and then 6 months later they're like, oh, I guess that was kind of like a regular hat. I don't know, man. Like, there's just like a lot of stuff going on, and I'm like, am I prepared to handle situations as they arise?
Mm-hmm.
In the same breath, though, there's no crystal ball to see what's coming. I'm overwhelmed.
That's fair.
I'm overwhelmed with the thought of being prepared for myself and my family, primarily, right?
Right.
If you guys get in a pinch, you're welcome to come over, when it hits the fan.
To be fair, I don't want to go to your neighborhood.
What's wrong with my neighborhood?
It just doesn't seem like a good spot to be in,
It's a nice place.
Hit the fan situation.
Okay. But that's probably okay. I don't know. Maybe part of being prepared is not letting people know your strategy. That's probably my strategy.
This whole time, he's been throwing us the shade, the smoke. I'm aloof. No. Boardman's dialed, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly.
He's actually going to
he's going to get some entertainment out of basically picking off people who are coming to try and take advantage of him.
Well, here's why. Okay,
we always
I could see this as a. Finish what you're saying.
We always wondered why he had such a huge garage. It was to house his M1A1 Abrams tank.
Yeah,
it's a nice tank. It is.
I like it. It gets me from point A to point B.
Great. Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So that is, you've got a couple different philosophies too. Like, do you burrow in? Do you burrow in? Do you bug out? But it all depends on the type of scenario. I mean, you could be in a natural disaster scenario. You could be in some sort of military conflict scenario. You could be in, I don't know.
Classic zombies.
Classic zombies, right? And then you think, okay, well, maybe my neighborhood would be good because...
The gates?
I don't have. Everybody says we have gates. We don't have gates. But if I was prepared, not to throw shade at my neighbors, but I think I would be likely to be more prepared than they are.
Okay.
So does that put me in a better position or a worse position because the people around me aren't as prepared, and so now they're going to want my preparedness?
I tell you what, a bunch of non-prepared city slickers can get pretty scary when they start getting hungry and they haven't gotten the chance to go in and get their nails done in a while. They can get pretty terrifying. The thing that we also need to address with this is, like you said, this is kind of a free-form conversation we're having. None of us, I think, at the table claim to be the world's greatest experts in preparation or anything like that. This is purely a potential kickoff to future episodes if this topic or the topics that come up today interest people. But so many people have different ideas about being prepared. And the thing is that until something actually happens and gives way, it's all just opinion. You know what I mean? And you can try and come up with every possible scenario in your head, but no matter how hard you try and how much time you take, you'll never come up with every potential scenario. That would be infinite. You would actually spend all of your entire life trying to come up with scenarios. You never actually come up with all of the potential possibilities. But anyway, so that's this conversation. That's my caveat corral.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one to make.
Mm-hmm. But like you said though, Mark, there's kind of categories of what one could prepare for, and one might prepare for each one differently. There's the whole, you bring it up like the fun way to bring it up for lack of a better term is like the Red Dawn scenario,
Right.
Because everybody watches the movie Red Dawn, and you watch that for entertainment because you're like, okay, a bunch of kids take on North Korea, Russia, whatever it is. But that's where it's like some other country or, whatever it is invades us. Of course, I'm sure many people have at the top of their mind right now. They're like, well, what if it's our own country? What if it's tyrannical government and all that? That's a potential scenario too. But yeah, then there's natural disasters. There's some sort of like infection thing. I mean, we just came out of a pandemic where at the beginning of that thing, I'm pretty sure people genuinely thought it was like going to be zombies.
Right.
For a little bit.
The end of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you look how people reacted too. Shelves are bare. Resources limited.
Mm-hmm. And maybe somebody out there was like, oh, I 100% called this. But I definitely did not call that toilet paper would be in such high demand.
Nope.
No.
Bizarre things that people were really going for.
Yep. It's a significant talking point on whatever scenario you encounter is trying to predict the reaction of those in your immediate environment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could have predicted that toilet paper would have been one of the most limited in supply, I would have not taken that bet. No, excuse me. I would have bet against it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Toilet paper? No, everybody's going to be out there buying peanut butter because it's shelf stable and highly nutritious. No, toilet paper. That was a
Can't
doozy.
eat toilet paper.
Nope. So here's step one in preparedness, I suppose, is try to predict what people are going to do, and you just simply can't.
No.
Right?
Mm.
Toilet paper.
I mean, that was basically the new currency.
It pretty much became that way.
Yeah.
I remember I went on to buy toilet
I'll take
paper
4 squares, please.
online at one point because we were running low at my house, and of course all the shelves were just bare of toilet paper. I remember going on and I had a moment where I considered buying a pack of toilet paper. I think it was of significant quantity, but it wasn't like a truckload, and it was $600. And for a moment, I was like, "Is this the only toilet paper that I'm going to be able to find?" And then I moved on. Somehow we found something else somewhere, but
that's unreal.
It
was summer.
In
we used
some ways,
leaves.
like how quickly we forget too. Like that was, really not that long ago, right? But like I forgot that, like, oh, if you saw toilet paper on the shelf, we better.
I'm not stocked up on TP anymore.
No,
I just have
exactly.
I'm back to a regular amount. Like maybe one 24-pack.
Right.
For the house.
You buy that for the house, it starts to dwindle. You can get another one.
I'll go.
Yeah, there's so many things to consider. Like I said, it's actually overwhelming.
It is. One thing that I think about a lot though with preparedness of my own is trying to balance how comfortable I'm trying to will my way into in this situation versus how much I'm just like trying to plan on surviving. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people when they're talking about their prepping plan, they're listing out items that they have. They're storing up like, they got in their bunker or whatever, they got a TV with a VCR with a bunch of videos and, like so that they can keep themselves entertained. And they got like, they got to have a generator for all these electronics that they're having. They got like a full kitchen in there or something like that. They got like all these things that seem like everyday luxuries, if you will. And it's almost like they're trying to set themselves up such that they have to have like very minimal change to their daily life in an apocalypse or in some sort of giant societal collapse. And I have to think to myself, okay, well, part of that would be kind of neat if you were pretty well just like set up. You know what I mean? Like the apocalypse is going on outside and I've got food for months and months and months and months and months and months stored up, and I've got like, I've got a TV. I can watch some TV so I don't go crazy. Like I've got all these nice things. I got heat. I got whatever it is. I'm like, how much do I actually need that versus how much should I spend more time on learning how to make a fire out of anything, or learning how to
Right.
survive in the cold, or learning how to like make things from scratch. Should I spend more time on my intellectual side learning on that stuff, or should I spend more time trying to make it such that I don't really need to rely on all these survivalist skills? That's something that goes through my head.
I think the answer to that is whether or not your plan is to simply never move from your position.
Mm-hmm.
If it is that you have established your boundaries and your kingdom, and you just that is where I'm going to stay, then great plan. Is that the best plan? Like is sticking put to one spot, not being mobile, acquiescing a whole bunch of Chef Boyardee in plan to weather the storm?
Yeah.
Is that the best way to go?
That's a tough one.
For me personally, it's not. Because I often think like, okay, what do you have there?
Right.
You have a large bank of resources. And if anybody discovers that you have a large bank of resources, now you become a target.
Right.
And if that kingdom is compromised and it's like, okay, shoot, my neighbors found out that I have the SpaghettiOs standalone, and I'll be frank, we've got a problem. Like we gotta bug out. We gotta get out of there. And then what do you carry?
Well, that's just it, though. Like, okay, that presents another problem, though. Now you're on the move with limited resources.
Sure.
Right. And I've always...
let me throw this. Everybody's
Please
in a
do.
different situation, too. Do you have a family, right? Is it more than just you? Do you have small children that are going to have a difficult time keeping up?
processing what's going on, and keeping up. And I mean, sometimes, heck, you think about like keeping quiet or, being able to sneak and stuff like that. I've thought about the whole burrow in versus bug out thing. And there's kind of, again, of course, it depends on the situation because, okay, so I think my mind tends to go to either governmental militaristic force coming in and invading or zombies. I go to those more so, actually, funny enough, than natural disasters, which natural disasters happen every single year to people all around the world. But I think we have to, maybe this is also partly because, if you're into this mindset, you're probably somebody whose mind needs to be kept busy. And in some ways, even though we're talking about pretty grim stuff, it's kind of entertaining to think about, right? To just sort of like ponder. But anyway, anybody who's, of course, actually been through a disaster is probably upset with me for saying that, but the people who like being prepared for things, people who like being organized and whatever it is, like they get some level of enjoyment out of it, even if it's mundane or sort of dark in this case. But anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, so like, let's say, boom, event occurs, whatever the event is. I've thought about the fact that if you go on the move, you got to figure out where you're going to go. And there's probably going to be a lot of other people on the move too. And there may be roads shut down. Like I've thought about this. In Wisconsin, we're in south central Wisconsin, southwestern Wisconsin, sort of. There's like Highway 151, there's Highway 94 if you're going west. I have no interest in going east. There's either a lake or Chicago. And neither of those things are great. I could go south, but then it's like you got to go around all sorts of other stuff.
And the tolls.
And the tolls. I don't want to end up paying tolls when I'm trying to get away from,
How
whoever it is.
inconvenient.
I know.
That's it. Actually, I've got
and tolls are extra when there's an apocalypse. And Illinois needs money.
In my bug out bag, I actually have got a fast pass, so I just zip right.
Do you? And
Slaps
yeah,
that
what is
sucker
that?
on the roof.
iPass, yeah.
Sure, that's good. Yeah, it's connected up to like a burner account or something like that. So that
The account's name is Bark Boardman.
Mark. So, like what if there's a pinch point when I get to Dubuque, as I think Eric called it once, Dubuque, Iowa, and it's like, oh, I can't cross into Iowa. Or when I get up to near La Crosse and I'm trying to cross over into Minnesota, I can't do that. Well, now what? Now I've separated myself from my home. Maybe it's been already invaded and inhabited by somebody else.
You've left resources that have been claimed.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm stuck here, and there's all these other strangers around me that I don't know. Or then it's like, okay, once I finally get to where I'm going, let's say I did, get through, well, then it's like, okay, how many other people had the same idea to go approximately here? So now am I going to have to, like, is it like the Wild West where I have to stake my claim now and sort of, like, set up my own frontier, but I'm fighting off like, raiders and all this other stuff? Is it like cowboys and Indians of old or something like that? All this.
Well, and you're talking about traveling, right? Well, your traveling is either going to, depending on your mode of transportation, but likely going to need fuel, some sort of fuel.
Yeah, where are you going to get fuel?
Is the grid down? Is somebody filling the tanks at the gas station? How long does that last?
And then, of course, so then it's like, okay, well,
how much can you carry with you?
Right. I planned on this, so I've got jerry cans of fuel. And it's like, well, those jerry cans are taking up a ton of space and weight in your vehicle, which weight is a whole nother. The vehicle is obviously something that I'm very interested in, but it's a whole thing that people just, I feel like, don't actually know enough about to. I'm not saying I know everything, but like I think people underestimate the importance of certain things, but like weight is one thing. It's you load it up with a ton of weight, you're going to get worse fuel economy, your suspension's not going to do what it's supposed to do. If you do have to go off-road, let's say, everybody's like, oh, you need a 4x4 for bugging out, but then they load it up with so much stuff that's like the suspension is constantly compressed and they're so heavy that they basically sink into any soft terrain. Like there's all this stuff, right? But anyway, if you're carrying your fuel along with you, that's taking up a bunch of space and weight. And I don't know. I mean, if you're really prepared, maybe you've got a diesel that you've converted to run on some sort of veg oil setup. You can just bring a bunch of
stop at a couple of fast food places.
Yeah, raid a fast food joint, which probably isn't slinging burgers, but maybe has a couple of fryers full of oil.
Oh yeah,
something like that. But like maybe you've prepared something. Along those
how can
lines,
you bank on that though?
You can't.
That's where I go back to just battening down the hatches.
Well, you get in a vicious cycle, though, Mark. You live in a heavily populated area. What's the first thing somebody who's out of resources, what are they going to do? They're going to go door to door to figure out whether there's resources there that they can exploit.
And I've been watching a lot of The Last Kingdom. It's a Viking type show,
Sure.
And I would say those people would be met with my sword.
And that.
Then you've taken on that lifestyle of there's just more people to have to sword,
which comes to stockpiling ammunition.
It's a very fascinating juxtaposition to be in, and I don't know if I'm stating my position. I think my position is be light, be nimble, be mobile.
I think that's in some ways I've gravitated more towards that because I realized over time. You take the Burrow In approach, and I think, Mark, like you said, you fight people off, let's say. If there comes a certain point where if someone or a group of someone's, once you got, you're going to get got. You know what I mean? So let's say it's another nation's military, right? Like, I can maybe take on, especially if I'm going, Patriot style, and I've got a bunch of muskets hidden behind trees, and I know the terrain better. I can take on a few guys, maybe.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, I've done that. Now they're going to report back, and here comes the Panzerschreck.
I don't know what that is.
That was, I'm thinking of Band of Brothers with the tanks, German tanks.
Okay.
I said it probably wrong. It's like Panzerschreck or something like that. If you say German words, you have to have like a certain level of anger.
There's a lot of guttural.
Yeah.
No,
you're
German
right.
Expert here,
and that's part of my theory or thought process. A little bit is like there's potential. Well, you hate to look at things, just like ultra grim, but there's potential that in some ways that maybe it just is a lost cause. But I would not go down without a fight, and if I'm going, I'm taking at least a few with me.
And maybe
because you know what,
your plan. Well, yeah, and maybe that's your plan. Is like, hey, I don't want to go down on the run. You know what I mean? Like, if you have a complete and total societal collapse, I have also wondered this too. People who are sort of scrapping to stay alive and like really, fighting off all, just like really getting after it. Now, I'm not saying I would take the position of just sort of like giving up. I would probably wind up fighting as long as I could fight to stay alive and keep my family alive and such. But I don't really think that it's ever going to come back to normal. You know what I mean? So like zombie apocalypse, some countries coming in, bombing everything and sending in troops, our big tyrannical government scheme comes out of nowhere and we're fighting, like it's like a civil war, whatever it is. If this occurs, it's not going to be like, oh, okay, I survived through it for like a year and a half, and then
Right.
then everything's back to normal again. You know what I mean? So maybe your position is just, I'm going to sit my butt here, and this is my hill to die on. I'm going to take on everybody I can. And if it comes down to the point where they got to bring in some Sukhoi, whatever it is, 5th generation fighter and just bomb me, I guess that's how I went.
There's that, and then I ask myself this question too. Like, we talk about some of this in terms of like, oh, you need to be like the people who surround you are a threat to you and your resources, which very well could be the case, right?
Possibly.
But are they, but could it be an asset? Could you unite in some ways? Are these people who will be your allies and be able, and you have strength and safety in numbers?
I feel like you're most likely to get that at the beginning of said issue.
Event.
When people are still Midwestern nice, at least around here. Because there's going to be a certain point where they're like, you know what, this ain't getting better. I got to turn into more of like, old-fashioned caveman or something. But at very first, they might be like, oh, yeah, no, this is really bad. We got to try and help each other out. Maybe you could try and form something then, but...
That's tough. I think you have to make some assumptions right up front. What are people in your community generally, and by that I mean like immediate area, generally capable of? So when you take stock of whatever radius you want to assign to your position, are the people in there capable of withstanding or weathering the storm? Or extend that radius, are the people within that capable of, disappearing into a large tract of wilderness and being okay?
Not being a huge burden.
Correct. And I think, honestly, like when I put this to thought, I think most people these days are not capable of weathering the storm and are not capable of disappearing into a large tract of wilderness.
Maybe this is where you're going, but how long would you actually have to last before you could come back?
It's an indeterminate amount of time. I think to Jim's point.
But I mean, like,
if an event,
it could be a month,
Sure.
Like, you're like, oh, dude, I was out in the woods for a month. Everybody gone, except the other 10 people that were out in the woods for a month, and,
Yeah. I mean, if an event is so cataclysmic that, like, these are your courses of action to take, I don't know that there is a comeback from that necessarily.
Probably.
Not in the. It doesn't turn back to yesterday.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, things that I'm thinking about, and maybe potentially they could get turned back on, but like, dude, like the grid goes down. Like there's no power. You could have as many batteries as you wanted, but I don't know how to
they power.
restart.
Yeah, I feel like your most likely scenario of being able to come back and things, not be just as bad, if not worse than they were when it started, is probably the natural disaster scenario.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have not lived through a natural disaster. I know plenty of people have, and it's extraordinarily devastating.
Devastating.
So I don't want to somehow make light of this, and but I feel like, yes, things may be destroyed, but you're not going back to deal with like, where my house once was is now like a foreign military base with tanks and fighter jets, and
the societal component still exists,
right?
And the environmental component is what was disrupted,
right?
It's a localized event,
sure,
where people from surrounding areas can assist to the best of their ability. I mean,
right.
Obviously, it's going to impact that person for likely the rest of their life. In some ways,
so is the elephant in the room? We're getting rid of environmental disaster because it just happens and we're powerless to stop it. And the elephant in the room is actually the societal collapse.
I'd say more.
Well, and I think an environmental disaster could cause societal collapse,
absolutely,
depending on the scale.
Yeah.
So I think what we're talking about here is like extreme invasion or societal collapse.
Yeah.
Due to
and I do feel
X, Y, or Z.
I don't know what it is, if we're just entering into a time that's just like a biblical proportion, or if it's just that so many people are so wigged out about stuff after the whole COVID whatever. Like it does seem like. Well, and of course, then there's many conspiracy theories about like the media feeding us all this and that. And I'm not saying I do or don't believe in those conspiracy theories. The point of this podcast is basically what I'm getting at, just not to be like some political thing. Anyway, but where was I at? Oh, it seems like we're on the verge of basically societal collapse in just like one of any millions of different ways, right? Because at first it was like, okay, COVID, and then it was murder hornets, and then it was, and I feel like I could probably Google something right now and just be like, next big storm, and there's going to be probably 10 articles that are like, we're about to see a once-in-a-millennium storm, that's brewing off the coast of, eastern or western Africa right now, and it's going to pick up steam, and if you're living in Wisconsin, you're going to get a Category 5 hurricane. Like, I could look up anything, or I could look up, like the some sort of zombie apocalypse, and people are going to be like, oh, well, some, 6th-generation COVID thing is now actually a zombie virus. Like, if you look into things, it seems like we're on the verge of 100 different societal collapses. So, I don't know where I was going at with that, but
it's a good just to paint an
it's a good point though,
picture.
Because it has forced people to think about things, good, bad, or otherwise, like we're talking about. Like, what is your plan, and how can you make sure that plan, in the event that whatever cataclysm 100 different ways occurs, you can keep moving.
Yeah.
Or stay put.
Right.
And weather that storm, proverbial or literal.
Well, and I think I'll throw this out there too. Like, I know we kind of just defined like, oh yeah, this is going to be like extreme societal collapse. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about, and I guess in a lot of ways it is. But I would say, in myself included, as far as even just basic preparedness for something, I guess that could be considered minor. And like, it would still be like a big challenge, right? But there are probably things like, whatever, an environmental event or something like that, that would not be as big a deal if you had some basic preparedness of even just like, food, water, shelter, ability to filter water, some basic stuff that your basic needs are not so basic when they're not being met.
Yeah,
sure.
So
what are your basic needs? I think that's
food.
That's
food,
what so many
food,
people
water,
want.
shelter. That's it, man.
Protection.
Yes.
Don't you think? I mean, because regardless of whether everybody always says food, water, shelter, and yet every time that there is some sort of a pickup in civil unrest or some sort of other impending doom, gun sales go up. Right. So like, people are also worried about that. And, so, I mean, that's a conversation. There's lots of different ways this could go. I feel like, again, like you said, Mark, it's overwhelming. We don't even know what way to take the conversation.
This is what I was like, oh yeah, I need that. And then I'm like, when I was talking about like, maybe I do need a, plate carrier and, way to just like a go bag, and
maybe,
and I probably do.
Maybe.
Right. But yeah, there's so many different ways.
If you play that game and you're like, maybe I'll need this, maybe I'll need that, you wind up having a lot of stuff. Think of, okay, plate care, and this is a lot of money too that you have to spend for something that you don't even necessarily know is going to happen, or maybe you think it's going to happen, but you don't know when it's going to happen, all that stuff, right?
But you can also justify it with it's pretty cool stuff.
It's cool stuff. Hey, I'm not going to argue there, but it's like, all right, plate carrier, armor plates, you've got gun, extra magazines, ammo, optic, flashlights, all the batteries to run all your crap. You've got food, you've got medicine, bags to carry all this stuff in. You've outfitted your rig, your 4x4 with bigger tires, suspension, whatever, all that other stuff, skid plates. You start getting like, all these fancy camp stoves. You got, tents. You've got whatever it is, special kind of boots, clothes. Like the list just keeps going on and on and on. If you think about like, oh, I might need that. I might need that.
It just gets heavier, and harder to transport and maintain and keep control of.
Yeah.
and you get more visible.
You do, yeah. The bigger the pack is on your back. Mark, you with your gigantic pack, you might look like prime rib out there.
Your pack's going to be pretty big.
Let's raid his inventory.
You know he'll have a lot of inventory unopened, new in box.
I think I truly believe the best strategy is be light, be nimble, be mobile, but know how to use your things and know how to exploit the resources around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what is, in my heart of hearts, I think that's what's going to separate the survivors versus not, is how a person could enter an environment, any environment, and exploit whatever's there without being visible, without being assigning target value to themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can have all these great things. You can have this fantastic ammunition stockpile and the Chef Boyardee and all this stuff. Can you carry it? And the answer is no, because it's too heavy. Think about what a person can carry. What's the heaviest pack out you've ever done?
I mean, nothing too extreme.
Okay.
Probably like...
I want to let me fast forward a little bit. You've transported what you can fit in your rig to the point that you're out of fuel. You've exhausted that. So we've gone a distance, and we've either run out of road or we've run out of fuel. Now it's everything on your back. What can you carry? And it's under 100 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so even if you get the lightest plate carriers, you get some poly plate carriers, you get this ultra high speed, low drag plate carrier. You've got a pretty damn efficient flashlight on your carbine. You got your pistol, your battle belt, your spare magazines, the ammunition within them, maybe a couple of reloads worth, and then your Chef Boyardee, and then your medicine, and then your cold weather gear. And like, you don't carry a lot of stuff. You got about 100 pounds on your person. And how long can you move with that 100 pounds on your person?
Mm-hmm.
And through what kind of terrain can you move with that 100 pounds on your person? And pretty soon, they find you not very far off the trailhead. Like a turtle stuck upside down on your back because you've got so much kit.
I feel people who are light, fast, mobile, all that stuff, they're probably the ones who will be able to make it the longest, I feel like.
I agree.
Aside from... See, I think if you're that kind of person, I think that you're going to be watching quite a social and whatever it is, experiment go on, unfold before your very eyes. Because there are going to be the people who hole up, right? And they've got a stockpile. And they're going to be dealing with people who are raiding them, trying to get at their stuff. And you're almost going to, right now at the time of this recording, I don't know when this is going to release, but we're watching March Madness. I feel like you're going to watch a tournament bracket occur.
Sure.
They're going to see all these people show up on either side of the tournament bracket, and it's going to end up being this guy who's got a fort, and that guy who's got a fort, and eventually they're probably, one of them's either going to lose to just getting raided out, whatever, or they're going to fight each other, and then there's going to be, sort of one combined thing there. And ultimately, you may, after all this fighting occurs, you may end up with a few who have managed to somehow beat the odds and fight everyone off, and now they are the king of the castle, but they're constantly either fighting people off, or now they have to manage a bunch of other people who they've sort of absorbed into their little society they've created. Basically, they're having to deal with a lot of politics at that point. You know what I mean? A lot of politics and a lot of personnel and supply chain, all this stuff. They've created a bunch of jobs for themselves. Whereas if you're the light, nimble, fast person on the outside, all you have to do is pretty much take care of yourself, and then you can sort of duck, dip, dive, duck, and dodge, all this other stuff.
Stay on the periphery of the kind of that ipso facto government that's been created somewhere.
Yeah.
And figure out how to exploit things that won't be exploiting their things and just fly under the radar.
You probably have to fight a lot less.
I think
some people have they've got a complex about the whole fighting thing. I'll fight everybody. And they take pride in that.
I think it's a foolish approach.
I think it is too, because there's always going to be somebody better than you.
Yeah,
or somebody who's in a better position than you, better situation, has the high ground. Are there any major fighters in history that have just gone
just
undefeated forever.
Total rogue. Well,
Like, I mean, I'm actually like, I'm literally referring to like sports fighting. You know what I mean? Like every great fighter eventually loses.
Yeah, you miss, you go left and you catch it on the chin when you should have gone right and it would have been a clean miss.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's over.
You can't ask a guy to be perfect through, you know, like just time again.
Yeah. No, I don't really think I don't think that exists. I try to look at like animals, like what animals on the landscape that live in harsh environments, like what do they do?
Yeah.
You know, they're oftentimes pretty mobile. They go places. They're not specialists with respect to the foods that they eat. They're generalists. They don't need a lot to keep them alive. They're specialists with respect to the environment. Like if they live in a desert environment, they have adapted a specialized tactic to living in that environment.
Yep.
Or if they live in an Arctic environment, they've adapted something to specialize within that environment. But they're fairly generalistic as to where they go, what they do, and why. And I think that's what keeps them moving.
Yeah.
And keeps their species thriving. And I think, again, I've come back to this like 3 times. I think my personal plan is to disappear into a remote area, know how to make fire, know how to catch fish, know how to set snares, know what plants I can eat, know what plants I can't eat. It was can and can't. I realized it sounded a lot the same in my head there. And then just not be visible, not be noisy, just be quiet.
You make fire to cook. You're visible.
Correct.
I mean,
you're right. Okay, but to that end, when do you make fire to cook? When you can see smoke in the air, or how big a fire do you make to cook? Do I make enough fire to?
Mark, you gotta watch.
I am
There's
an
a
American,
guy,
and I am gonna make a big fire.
Okay, well,
he's gonna be roasting a pig on the spit.
Yeah.
Have
Just
you watched?
barbecue sauce.
Hey neighbor, come on over.
The Raiders are 4 miles downrange of him.
They're actually taken off. They're sort of thrown off guard.
Yeah, is that honey barbecue?
Is that sweet baby Ray? Is that Mark Boardman from the Vortex Nation podcast? Yeah. Hey, I got this gun off your recommendation. You know what? I'm not going to shoot you with it.
But I will take those 12 bottles of sweet baby Rays you've been packing around in that backpack.
Yeah. Have you seen the guy on YouTube? He's a guy in Canada, and he camps in extremely public places, but he remains unseen.
I either saw that or you sent that to me.
Now that guy's getting some good practice in. Have you seen this guy?
I haven't.
So he'll go to like the median,
like a roundabout.
He'll go to a roundabout, like the middle of a roundabout that's got some sort of like arborvitae and all this other like random little plants. He'll camp there overnight and try not to be noticed at all. And part of his challenge is that he has to cook himself a dinner every night. And he does, and he usually is like he'll like go through the little like recipe that he's got. It's kind of fun. But yeah, he's camped in the middle of a roundabout that's like dead smack in the middle of town. He camped on, when you have a highway going on, an off-ramp, and a bridge that goes over the highway from the off-ramp, and usually like on that little triangle patch, there might be like a few trees and stuff. Like he's camped in one of those overnight, and he'll set up like camouflage for himself, and he'll and at one point even he usually actually will go and sort of wait until no one's around, usually like in the middle of the night, and he'll run out and he'll walk around his campsite with his camera to test himself and see if he can notice his campsite, and then he'll run back in. It's very interesting.
I think another significant part about that is you have to try to see through the eyes of those who are going to be around you, and like think about when you're driving at speed on the road. How much of your environment are you aware of?
Driving at speed?
Yeah, like you're usually driving to work.
Well, I suppose I'm very aware of what's in front of me, but I'm probably not very aware of what's around me.
Are you looking for an encampment in a median?
Oh, no.
Right.
No.
Are you looking for a cooking pot out of place? Right? And when you see that, even if you made eye contact with whatever that item is or that structure is, does your brain register that is an encampment in the median?
No.
No, I think your brain's just like, not valid. Continue on. Right?
People may be a little bit more aware of that after a societal collapse.
I think it would take some time, though.
It would.
I think what you would have is in times of stress, and I know you guys talk about this at Edge too when you guys are doing training. In times of stress, you get very narrow focused. Like the walls close in on you and you get tunnel vision. You see rear sight, front sight target. And I think for a decent period of time, people are going to be that
I
way.
actually see my dot, Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, can you explain what you just described?
Analog sights.
Oh,
Yeah.
analog.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So anyway, nice call, by the way, fellas. Really good play, because I just shoot a red dot like not very good.
There's a place about 75 yards across the parking lot.
It's a me thing.
It's not.
It is a me thing.
It's not.
I think that people.
This was the longest intro into an intervention I've ever.
Yep. And here we are.
I think that people will become so narrow focused for such a period of time that actually being able to hide in plain sight, in the literal sense, will be a little bit easier than we all might think.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that because of a lot of people these days, like dear friends of mine that have no business being off the trail, literally. And I think about them, and then I think about the layers of people away from my friendship or knowledge of being so dependent on the modern amenities. We talked about the batteries. What are you carrying batteries for? To power your amenities, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that will put at the forefront of their mind, God, I got to have a pile of batteries. To what? Power your amenities?
Like 500 CR 2032s,
Yeah.
like a million AA's, AAA's, CR 123. I mean,
I think even that person is pretty far removed from the person who can look at the trail and be like, all right, I can go disappear into there. They'll be afraid of the dark, quite literally, and you'll be able to not have to go very deep to avoid detection from them.
it would be cool to have night vision, though.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
I want to have batteries.
It would be an amazing force multiplier until it became dead weight.
Yeah.
Right.
And so how do you get far enough away from where that force multiplier is a force multiplier and now is an inconvenience?
Here's the thing. Here's one thing to think about.
Yeah.
How maybe you just need that force multiplier for not that long.
Sure.
What if
Maybe.
You have to hinge a bet there, man. It's like, how long does that go? How long until we exhaust CR 123As until they're like very difficult to find?
Especially with the really nice to have items, it's not going to take long. I mean, one of the really nice to have items would be in this side. Well, it's probably more so if you're holing up. Well, no, it'd be nice to have in any situation would be thermal.
Sure.
So
That'd be
one
cool.
thing that I
But
feel like
like-
I've heard lately is like if you are in like a combat scenario or something like that, and I'm the furthest thing from this person, by the way. I'd like
Mark.
to get better at it. But if you don't have thermal, you're not in the fight.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
You ever seen the movie Predator?
Lots.
Just cover yourself in mud. You work for Arnold. Do it now. No, it's super valid, right? So
Because somebody might see you with their thermal.
Correct.
If that's.
I think that's super valid, and that I think reinforces my personal position is I'm going to assume, and you have to do a lot of assumptions in a scenario like this, that folks with that capability, hostile, friendly, or otherwise, I'm not going to sit around and try to suss that out because I'm probably too danger close there at that point, are going to be fairly localized. And I'm going to try to get as far away from that as possible. And I'm going to try to get deep enough and like literally exploiting canopy as cover from that as possible, as quickly as I can.
Do you think that if
Winter's tough in Wisconsin, boy.
Winter is tough in Wisconsin.
It is.
And that's here again. What are you willing to be uncomfortable with and for how long?
Winter's tough in Wisconsin, but there's less stuff that wants to kill you on the ground in the winter in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Now
you go somewhere down south because you're like, I don't have to deal with the winter. This is
my
great.
gosh,
And then you're walking
yeah.
around the ground. There's
Cottonmouth.
gators and cottonmouth
Yep.
and there's big spiders and anyway. Do you think that actually like this military invasion scenario? Do you think in that scenario you're probably more likely to ally with people that you bump into?
I think so. I think
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I feel like in that situation, maybe the situation where there's some sort of like mass hysteria, the zombie
Yeah.
apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's where pretty much anybody could be your enemy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anybody you run into, I wouldn't trust anybody, but I wouldn't trust you guys.
Yeah.
That's not true. At least not at first. But like
Noted.
a year into the apocalypse. But if you in the military invasion scenario, I might be more likely to be out in the woods and see somebody else, and like, you know, they don't.
We're going to start yelling thunder and flash back at each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the table is against the wall.
You would have weeded out some things when you encounter that person. You know that they are likely have the ability to be an asset, not a liability.
sure.
Well,
Because
yeah, and they
they are
probably
they're
have
sufficient.
the same enemy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a realistic thought process.
Yeah, because in that scenario, it turns into like everybody versus the bad guys. Whereas in another scenario where you get hit with the zombie apocalypse, it's all of a sudden it's just everyone versus everyone.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. The one hard thing would be if you start like later on into a military invasion or some sort of like big tyrannical overthrows. If you start having the defectors, not dementors, but
I don't know.
What do they have that in Red Dawn? Isn't there the scene where it's like the kids who were kind of like jerks or whatever, and all of a sudden they start walking around wearing the other military's like garb, and they're doing the military's dirty work for them and trying to get in, and, you know, use their connections.
The turncoats.
Yeah, the turncoats.
Yeah,
Those you have to watch out for those.
Yeah.
You have to watch out for those.
I think the more remote you are, the less likely you are to run into somebody like that.
That's true.
I think where the
City
influence,
slickers, that's where you're running them.
I think where the influence of the oppressing force can be most applied is where you're going to have that. The further you get from that influence, the less likely you are to turn into a...
They may even just not bother going out there.
Correct. Because why would you get far from supply chain routes?
The return on the return on investment for them is like, okay, we went out and we got like 10 guys.
I think
unless, of course, everybody runs to the middle of nowhere in the wilderness, and then, of course,
I just don't think everybody's going to do that. Personally, I think I think the initial thought process.
Say they're going to do that.
I know, but like if you've ever done any camping in some fairly remote places,
it's hard.
It is
even
hard.
If you know what you're like. I don't claim to be like the best at it by any stretch of the imagination. I enjoy it every time I do it. I'm like, that's kind of hard.
It is. Like, I was mule deer hunting this year. Not a remote place. Remote in the context of, like, I could walk for 20 miles and not hit a road.
Mm-hmm.
At a very certain spot that I was at, the biggest challenge that I was encountering on that hunt was how to keep water a liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that changed the entire approach that I had to the hunt. How was I going to do that? And, like, I can plan it out, but is it sustainable? I think, yes, it could be sustainable, but my God, was it inconvenient. Guess what hostel I stayed in? Yeah, and it was nice. I slept in a warm bed on that one. I think a lot of people, vast majority of them, follow that route instead. If you go camping in some, like I think during COVID, we went camping a lot. Because there's nothing, like, this is what I do anyways. I don't go to the city. I don't go to the theater or whatever it is other people do. And
the theater.
I was in a campground that I've stayed at many times, or at least regionally, many times. And there was a lot of people who had no business camping there.
They probably had generators and
bingo
iPads connected to chargers.
That's one thing I don't get. Why would you go through the effort of just moving
your
the house?
Because
that's not as good as your regular house.
That's the thought process, though. That is what they believe it is, and it was so incredible to me to see this. I was in like a wilderness area, and things that I have never seen there, and I frequent this area a lot. I've never seen a power boat on this highway. I've never seen a jet ski on this highway. I've never seen a Class A RV. Like the one where you got
on the highway.
Well, this is a road. I shouldn't call it a highway. It's called a highway. It is a highway, but it's like a remote road. These are not things that you see. I get into this campground that is otherwise a place where if I decided on a Friday night that I was going to stay there on the weekend, I could drive the 8 hours up there, and like every other year, guaranteed I'd get a site. I could probably pick my site. And next to me was a group of young people, and they had some brand new tents. Like brand new tents, and you can always
cut the tags off.
They did. They got the tags off, but you can always tell like how much woodsmanship does this individual have by the pitch of their tent, location, placement, facement, and how well it was pitched. And these things reminded me of Eeyore's structure. like that he lived in the woods that always fell down, and like Pooh would come reconcile him. He's like, "Hey, it'll be all right, friend." And so I'm sitting back watching this, and I'm like, I'm in awe. I've never seen anything like this. There's an RV a few spots down. Never seen an RV in this place. They've got like lights strung up around the campsite. Somebody's flying a drone around. I'm losing my mind. And these individuals next to me are like, well, what do we eat? I don't know. Did you bring food? No. Well, we picked up these bag meals on Amazon.
Oh, so they weren't just camping. They were like, they'd bugged out.
Well, kind of, yeah. And so they're like, we should build a fire. How do you build a fire? I got a Bic. So what did they do? They cut down a green tree. And the tree was probably like 5-6 inches in diameter. They felled this tree. And then
in the campground.
In the campground, yeah. And the funniest part is I remember they had a Gerber camp axe, which is a good axe. They brought it out of the back of a Subaru. And
Whoa.
What's that supposed to mean? What's that supposed to mean?
Before we start saying Subaru in that tone, okay, I get that there is a stereotype.
It's a modern Subaru.
Oh, then go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't.
They had to take it out of the packaging, which they struggled with.
Every tool is new at some point,
Every
Ryan.
tool is new.
And that's potential fuel.
It's probably not the time to be taking it out of the packaging when you're there, but
And then they cut down a black spruce that was green.
Okay.
And then they cut it into log-like sections that resembled every cartoon fire they've ever seen in their lives.
And did they try to just light those just straight
Never
up?
got that sucker going.
No.
Never got that sucker going.
Here, okay, couple things
tree.
here.
Yeah.
And I think it plays into the conversation that we're having right now of being like they were able to get some items.
Yep.
And you made a decision, right? They didn't know how necessarily to use the items or have the experience to, in practice, do the skills that they needed to accomplish. So I'd say lesson learned.
Correct.
They might be way more prepared now after this event.
Yes.
And I guarantee they learned a ton because, honestly, like, that is when you learn is when you actually do something. That sucked.
I
That
don't
did
want
not
to
work and you
I
figure
don't
stuff
want
out.
to poo-poo these individuals for doing it. Because I mean, like a dichotomy here. So part of me is like, man, you got no business being here. The other part of me is like, I am really glad to see some people walking out of their comfort zone that otherwise would have been doing whatever it is that people in the city do on the weekends. I was so refreshed to see that happen.
Actually do anything for what it's worth.
And I agree.
I've been to a city before. There's nothing to do.
There's nothing for you there. You know what a city is? You know what a town is? It's where people hate you. Joe Dirt. I was very juxtaposed. On one hand, I was like, man, you got no business being here. On the other hand, I was like, that is great to see some adult onset outdoors people coming out and doing stuff outside. They didn't do it right, but you are absolutely correct. From the spirit of recreation outdoors, they learned some lessons, and I think are better off for it.
No, 100%.
I don't think you can.
I'm not knocking them. I'm using them as an example of like that is a large majority of people.
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
So what you're saying is in this case they got to do it and it was a practice and they got to learn from it. But if SHTF,
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that's when you're trying to learn all this stuff. Not exactly a great time to have to be learning all that stuff.
They're not going deep. They don't know about water purification. Beaver fever will strike them, and they don't know what food they can and can't eat out in the wilds.
Even water purification, though.
It's a tricky subject.
It's tricky.
How many iodine tablets do you carry?
Yeah.
If you're Nate, I wonder
how,
if Nate
how
listens.
long until your filter wears out? How long until you got a SteriPen, batteries?
I wonder if Nate listens to our podcast. Remember that?
No.
Remember Nate?
He doesn't.
Remember Nate when he just dunked his water bottle into the stale, stagnant section of the river and it came out brown? He just dropped a tablet into it and said it was good.
It was the most that we were surrounded by so much good water.
There was a lot of good water, and he found the only little stagnant puddle of bad water, and then just dropped a tablet into it, and was like, "Guys, this tablet says it will kill all of the bacteria."
99.99% effective.
We got to camp.
He's still alive too. That's the crazy.
He was right as rain, and we actually still had water with us. We brought some water. We had plenty of clean water.
He was living in the moment.
He was. Hey, you know what? And good on him. But like again, with like thinking through, like if I had to filter some water on that trip, Like, he got to shore. It was muddy, boggy river shore. Think the kind of
Beaver fever.
like soft sediment of
It's
when
got
you're
beaver
in
fever.
like there was like lily pads, by
Yeah,
us.
not
And when
beaver
you
fever.
sink your foot down in and then you pull your foot up, it creates that plume of just like mud and debris and goo.
Poo.
He didn't let that settle before he dipped it in. I'm like, Nate, there's lots better water than just the like super gross water that you just like filled your your bottle with there. And he was just like so confident in those tablets, though. And then he took it down and he didn't complain of the flavor or anything. I mean, I guess good on him. There's me being picky. I'd been like, Nate, why don't you go over there where the water is clear, not step into the water, and then dip your water bottle in, and then put, if you want to use the tablets, but start with clean water.
He was a good sport the whole time.
Yeah.
But I think to the whole point of this conversation, though, it's that you have to realize in a situation like we're discussing and like everybody's imagining when they prepare for these things, there's no backup hotel. And there's no backup, let's just get back in the car and head home. This is kind of a crap show. You're in it. You know what I mean? Like even now, my wife and I, it's like we go somewhere and like this isn't working, the kid's a mess, like all this stuff. It's just like, let's just go home.
Right. Pull the plug.
That's where I feel like so many people, even now when they're like, oh yeah, go out and go camping, or they're like roughing it. They always go out knowing there's a backup. That's going to be the shocker. It'd be a shocker for me. I feel like it'd be a shocker for anyone because your whole life there's always been,
there's always backup.
Yeah.
Right.
Something you can do.
Speaking of that.
Well, even when you go like on a hard hunt for a week, you're still going home.
You're going to go home, yeah.
You're still getting back to somewhere where there's a bed and a shower and there's no backup. It's what you're able to adapt, overcome, deal with things as they come.
It is.
Go.
Well, I was just going to say, we were mentioning just before this that we have like 10 minutes left before we actually have another engagement planned. However, because we haven't even scratched the surface. We've kind of just talked about
we've talked in circles. We've gotten
how
nowhere.
much of a conundrum this is. And like we said, this is a conversation that's likely to kick off more podcasts because we want to, I think, just because all of us personally are interested in the idea and the topic of preparation, prepping. And so this hopefully will be more episodes. But I tell you what, one thing that I was thinking in the shower today, because I was standing in the shower and I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's nice to be able to shower, get clean, not stink, that sort of thing. And knowing this podcast is coming up, hygiene in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
When you're off grid and the grid has collapsed and you're on your own for weeks, months, a very extended period of time. I don't know if I've ever considered that, really, or what that looks like. You know what I mean? Because most of the time you go on a hunt, right? And you're like, okay, I brought a pack of baby wipes with me in like a plastic bag to toss them in when I'm done.
Right.
You just give yourself a quick little like whatever. But you can't carry with yourself enough baby wipes to wipe yourself off with for like, months at a time. But if you don't do anything, you're going to get all gangrenous and you're going to get bacteria eating your skin away and all that stuff. Can you imagine what your feet look like if you've been wearing the same socks and boots for like 2 weeks?
Oh, you're going to need to air things out a little bit.
Remember when I broke my tooth?
Yeah.
That'll go septic and kill you.
Uh-huh.
I had a modern amenity. I had a gentleman, a dentist, and he simply extracted that tooth.
Oh, God.
Life was good.
My mouth starts to feel weird when I think about that. But
I mean, Tom Hanks and Castaway, man. Coconut and a freaking ice skate.
Got
it's
it.
a good thing he had that ice skate.
Stop talking about teeth stuff.
Jeez Louise. No, you're right, Jim. But I think it's also something that it's an amenity in some ways. There's definitely certain things you need.
I'm not saying you're going to be taking a bath. I'm not saying that you do hygiene for the sake of like being presentable and smelling nice. I'm saying you do hygiene for the fact of like not getting infections, not having your skin melt off, not getting gangrene, trench foot, severe, whatever it is, like fungus and all that stuff.
I think you're gonna have to exercise just like different methods of like hygiene self-care. Like it'll be like, I'm going to wash my socks in the creek and I have time to dry them out because they're my only pair of socks.
Right. Well, or then do you have a backup pair of socks? Do you make sure you have a backup pair of socks in your go bag, right? I would.
I mean, two would be nice.
Your feet are, if there's any, Vietnam War vets and all that other stuff watching this right now, I know there's one at least got his hat down there. Like your feet are tremendously important, right? And
you are correct.
Having those things go sour on you,
not good.
No, super bad. I mean, and even just avoiding blisters, and dealing with cuts and all that other stuff. I kind of lump that into hygiene.
I would hope that you would I would hope that you would harden over time, in some ways.
I think you would, but
you would, but like,
and you got to wash your hands, right? You don't want to get sick. You know what I mean? You go.
Think of a tiny cut that can turn into a raging infection. And then we have our regular lives now, and we can go buy some Neosporin, or we can buy some Bacitracin zinc, or we can buy some hydrogen peroxide. We can take care of that.
I know.
I think that's one thing that they always miss in TV shows. Because in TV shows, somebody comes out and they're like, I've been in the wilderness forever. And they have a bunch of like painted on scrapes on their face and some dirt, but they have no acne.
Yeah.
Like they don't have any like fungus growing on their toenails. Like they don't have any of that stuff. They look very like dressed up dirty.
Yep.
Whereas like when you get like real rank.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that could lead to bad stuff.
If you've ever had a bad poison ivy rash, go wild. Like what that can do to you. Mm-hmm. And then you add some sort of swamp environment to that, and now you got the swamp bacteria in your open wounds.
Ooh. Bad news. Ooh. That's a topic there in and of itself.
So you better be studied on.
Yeah, what plants can you utilize to? I don't know.
You better be studied on field medicine,
herbal remedies.
You better be studied on shelter, and within shelter, I'm going to put fire, right? Food procurement of any kind, whether it's vegetation or mammalian or fish or any of that, and then evasion.
I mean, you talk those guys in SEER school, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We got to get Grantham back out here to talk to us about everything that we probably said that was entirely wrong. And
right. Well, and I think we even talked about doing something like that.
We did.
Or at least, I know we brought it up. I don't know.
I do it.
They're down. But,
10 likes and Mark goes through SEER school.
That's all we need, 10 likes.
What is you with 10 likes again? I do have one more question. I know we got to jam out of here. Because I'm curious because you're like,
I got one more thing too, just it's a statement. But
okay.
After yours.
You're like, I'm bugging out. I'm, leaving the city. I'm going to be in the woods, self-sufficient, survival. So what's your I'm thinking this is likely.
What's your spot?
A maximum of a 2-gun scenario. Likely a 1-gun scenario. But I'm going to say you have one long gun and maybe a pistol. What is your gun? 22, 5.56?
It's kind of whatever's at hand.
Okay, but what are you leaving with? It's time to leave.
When you say what's at hand, like your houses.
Okay, so okay.
Yeah, what's at hand is going to be the one gun that's in your hand when you go.
This started at your house. You were at home.
So I'm at home, and woof, the thing goes off.
Yeah.
All right, and now it's time to boogie.
Okay.
Probably grabbing an AR because they're an extremely utilitarian piece. They're reliable through a lot of weather conditions. Pretty versatile cartridge. I can shoot small game with it. Winged creatures are a little bit tricky. Good news is geese do land. I will have a pistol. It's very likely. It's a small, discreet thing. I can turn over my long arm and, hey, I got nothing on me, man.
Then bam.
Yeah. And so probably that. Ammunition count is a very hard thing to predict. Things I think that are a good idea.
You're going to be using it potentially to fight and
potentially, yeah,
to get food.
Things I think that are a good idea. Carrier with a chest rack, or a decent battle belt.
Yeah,
yeah.
No plates.
Oh, plates are a good idea.
The weight though.
My
that long of a time.
Poly
there's some
plates are
pretty
pretty light.
there's some pretty lightweight plates and pretty thin plates.
Yeah, poly plates are multiple impacts. You can drop them; they don't shatter. They're not heavy in terms of
Even
plates.
some of the soft, flexible stuff will take a pistol round, But, one thing, okay, so my statement was going to be related to the gun, because I was just going to say, after we had a conversation a while back about the scout rifle, and we were talking about ARs and their undeniable utility across all things.
Yeah.
Somebody commented, I don't actually even remember the name of this person. Somebody commented and said that ARs are only range toys, and that this was like completely false, and that there's so many better guns out there. And I about fell backwards out of my chair, a chair with a back, mind you. So I would have had to get lift over. It was a dramatic thing. I couldn't believe that somebody still thinks that. ARs are
super useful tools.
They can be used for almost anything.
Very accurate. The cartridge is certainly sufficient for a myriad of tasks.
Oh, dude, I'm not hesitating.
You know what? You want to double down
Very
on this.
reliable now.
You go buy yourself an Atchison Senior type insert for your AR. You go get yourself a couple bricks, 22 long rifle. Now you have a handy defense tool. You have a pretty decent long range application. Not that it's the best, but it's pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. You can take big game with it, because I've done it. And you have an Atchison Senior type insert for your AR. Now you shoot 22 long rifle out of it.
Yeah.
Now you can be discreet.
I just can't think of any other gun to take, because when I watch zombie movies and there's dudes clearing a house with a bolt action hunting rifle, I'm like, no thanks.
Okay, let me. Now that we're on this topic, and I know we have to go. But why is somebody always have a crossbow or a regular bow, and they're the most effective person in the whole
It's the
group?
last thing that was in Dick's Sporting Goods when they rated it before they went out and about. And
that's
because
fine.
Everybody took everything else other than the crossbow.
I get that. That's fine. Hey, it's better than nothing. I'm just asking, why is that person always the most effective person on the battlefield?
That's a good question.
I mean, you play that out, you're going to see a de-evolution of society one, but then amenity and usefulness, right? So a gun without ammo becomes a club. And a bow, which before was at the very, very entry level of effective tools, now all of a sudden is elevated above that gun. I get it.
You can make arrows.
Yeah,
for
right. And
I
you
can see
can recover the
devolving.
arrows.
You can recover it, right? But eventually you're going to be out of let's say you had a super sick, crossbow or compound bow, right?
Sure.
It requires a very specific type of arrow. Eventually you're going to be out of those arrows. Really, if it keeps devolving, you're going to a self bow with self-made arrows and fletched with turkey feathers from a turkey that you had to kill is going to be what you're at. Unless
you're onto something.
Unless we're able to restart the Industrial Revolution.
Which is what our hope is.
That's our hope.
Okay. We got a thing. Sorry guys, but this needs to be revisited. And just continued on.
Let us know. What's your plan? Do you have a plan?
Tell us.
What sort of
because we obviously don't. We've come up with nothing.
No, a pin would be great. We should get some experts in here.
Yeah. What type?
Talk more about this.
What type of experts do you want to hear from? Do you have suggestions for experts you want to hear from? Let us know.
Thanks.
Until next time, stay safe.
Bug out.
Be prepared. Bug out. Go to Ryan's camp spot with the RVs. Talk to you later. Bye.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.